Hello, everyone. This is Rick, and welcome to Astral Club. This episode will be entitled Astral Guide School, number 1. But before we get into that, I just want to let everyone know that I'm very grateful for all my subscribers and also, most especially, my Patreon supporters. If you feel drawn to support Astral Club on Patreon, you get a couple things. You get the videos early on Tuesday or Wednesday, and there's also an email in Patreon that you can contact me directly and ask any questions or just tell me what's on your mind. And that link will be in the description. Okay, now Astral Guide School. This whole episode, this was sprung on me about a week ago. I'm still a little bit in shock. So I'm just going to go through with you what I experienced and what I might be experiencing more in the future. It still seems very unreal to me, and I have this serious imposter's syndrome. You may have heard of it. It's a psychological condition that just about everybody has, where you feel you don't belong where you are, whether it's in some school that you attend or your job or who knows. So let's just, before we get started, I just want to make sure everybody understands that guides are folks who generally have had lifetimes here on Earth. So they understand what it's like to, go through the everyday grind here on this blue-green planet. So they can be more understanding, more empathetic. Anyway, they've passed over and they've decided not to reincarnate and not to move on to a higher plane, but to assist those still in body, in the physical, on Earth. So let's get started. Now, when I astral projected about a week ago, I got out of my body, and before I started off on the particular mission that I'd had for that night, I was pulled away by a mighty force, like a gigantic wind that you cannot resist, and it reminded me of what I'd experienced in the past with my angel friend. When I appeared, I temporarily blacked out. When I came to, I was standing in a hall that looked a lot like the one where I met my angel the time when I said I had questions to ask. And that was a video some months back. It was, let me try to describe this to you. Imagine if the ancient Greeks and the Romans had our technology and unlimited trillions of dollars to spend. It was this gigantic marble hall with these beautiful Ionic type pillars, the ones you see in ancient Greek, ancient Roman temples. And they were decorated with gold and with lapis lazuli, and it stretched on for I couldn't see the end of it. So it was enormous. So it was like I said, it was like some sort of ancient Greek or ancient Roman mad dream of what a temple could be like. I found myself there in this wondrous place, obviously a little disoriented, and I was among a group of 11 other students. And they were standing about, and there was a teacher there who appeared to be Indian, if I had to take a guess. And it kind of appeared to me like they were waiting for me to arrive. And so once I saw what was going on, the teacher got started. And he welcomed all of the students and said, This is, Astral Guide School. It's going to prepare you to assist those souls on earth who need your help. And then he said namaste, and ask everyone to introduce themselves. So they went around, and I was at the end of the half circle, which was great because I was a bit in shock, as I said. Anyway, everyone introduced themselves. I'm not going to get into all the. When I say introduced, all they had to do was think, and everyone could read what it is they were trying to communicate. So it was all, it was all done telepathically. And also, remember, when you're in the astral and you're communicating in this way, you also get other things too, not just words. You get emotions, feelings, philosophies, you name it. So it's a very rich text, much richer than spoken language is for us. Even when someone has great command of a language, there's only so much he can communicate with our limited physical, earthly dialects and languages. When they came to me, keep in mind that every one of these students had wonderful things to say, very philosophical, very on point to how they wanted to assist mankind and help others grow, and it was very, very inspiring, quite frankly. And when they got to me, for once I was at a loss for words. The teacher, the students were all looking at me hesitantly, and all I could think of to say was, I'm Rick. I almost said, and welcome to Astral Club, but I didn't. And then I said, how's it going? That's all I could think of to say. The teacher then thanked everyone for their input, and he introduced me as a bit of a maverick, he said. And he said that Rick still has a physical body on Earth. And when he said that, all the other 11 students turned to look at me like I was some rare caged zoo animal that they'd never seen before. Obviously, they're very rare in this type of a situation, living people. And then they were able to turn around and look behind me, and they could see all the astral fiber filaments connecting me with the earth. And so it was, I was a little embarrassed by the attention that I was getting. Normally I like attention, but this was a little bit too much. At any rate, I guess the teacher decided that enough was enough, and they decided to go on with the lesson. I then experienced, along with the class, a whirl of movement, another second of unconsciousness. And then we found ourselves in a very different environment than that beautiful, lovely, ancient Greek or Roman temple that we had been in. And obviously, you could see from what you saw around you, you knew from what you felt that we were in a very low part of the astral plane. Around us, there was ruins everywhere. The predominant colors were black, gray, ruined homes, ruined cars. It was just a very, very depressing, awful plane to be in. You actually felt a little depressed, and I kind of put up some shields to help put off some of the waves of terror, fear, regret, every negative emotion that you could possibly imagine. Because when you're in the astral, if you're open, all of this stuff comes pouring in. And especially when you came from an area that was so beautiful and light and energy filled, and then suddenly you're dumped there. It was such a shock that I had to throw up a little bit of energy barriers just so I could remain there and semi sane and ready to listen to what was going to happen here. So as we all stood there in expectation of I know not what, suddenly a figure appeared before us. He was dressed in a tattered German WW2 black uniform. And that's all the detail I can get into on this channel. His face was dirty. His hair was disheveled. He looked at each of us one at a time. And the look in his eyes was of someone who'd seen 1,000 horrors. A soul that had suffered and been blasted. He was definitely a figure of some sympathy, I guess you might say. I mean, at least that was my initial reaction. He immediately fell to his knees, he lowered his head, and he began to sob. Our teacher went over to him and put his hand on his head. The information was then released about this person, and the teacher was releasing this, not him. He was in too much of a state. He couldn't possibly have told us his life story in any kind of a coherent way in the state that he was in. And what we saw before us was disgusting, was horrifying. This man had participated in and perpetrated horrible crimes. He had been responsible for the suffering of many, many, many hundreds and perhaps thousands of innocent men, women, and children during that time. He had enjoyed himself. He had felt powerful as he hurt these people and ended their lifetimes on planet Earth. And these people did not go nicely. It was in terror and suffering and fear. It was quite awful. I felt sick to my stomach. The evidence of all of this, and I want to try to explain this as much as possible. I know we've all watched television programs where you see scenes like this and it affects you. But let me tell you, when you're in the astral and you experience this the way we were experiencing it, it becomes much more real in the worst possible way you could think. You get very much a taste of what these people went through. You feel those feelings of terror and fear and pain in a very real way. I'm not talking about a theoretical way, a very real way. The teacher then said that this kneeling man had chosen to go through each and every ending experience that he had subjected others to. And that as he kneeled there before us, he had experienced all of that pain and terror and fear and horror of those last moments for each and every one of his victims. And of course, that explained to me the state that his soul was currently in. The teacher then turned to the man and he said that he was so sorry for what he did, and that, begged he begged us for forgiveness. And as just getting that sentence out was a struggle, because the astral versions of sobs and you name it, it took forever for him just to express that simple sentiment. We now beheld a soul where all the falseness and all the pretense had been stripped away. This was a sincere apology. It's not like on the physical, where a child does something wrong and a parent forces that child to apologize to whomever he offended. And the child says, "Okay, I'm sorry." It's obvious the child didn't mean the apology and that they're not really sorry for whatever their actions were. It was a forced apology. That's not possible in the astral, because you can tell sincerity right away. You can feel it. And this man's apology was sincere. And in particular, one of the students stepped forward, and in an instant, we all knew that this fellow student of mine had been one of his victims. And worse, his other victims included this man's family. And I just stood there in awe as this student said, "I forgive you for what you did to me." And he extended his hand and he helped this man up to his feet. Now, that did affect me quite severely, deeply. But right after that emotion, as the man stood up, I got a lot more in depth as to the individual he had been and how cruel he had been, even to his own family, and how he had climbed the ladder in this evil regime through one act of cruelty and evil after another. And suddenly there was this feeling of wrongness that welled up within me. And I said, "Wait a damn minute. This man is a mass murderer. He can't be let off that easily." When I said that, the teacher looked at me for a minute, and all the other students were looking at me as well. And my anger drained away as everyone stared at me. But the teacher said, "What punishment would you have us subject him to?" I hadn't expected that question, so I thought for a moment. And I know religious people believe in a hell, a place of eternal suffering, which I never was comfortable with, because something that is eternal, it always seemed like excessive punishment. But I said, well, he should, be sent somewhere to suffer for a period of time. Teacher said, "How long?" I said, "Well, his country, his regime said they would last for 1,000 years. So maybe he should be sent somewhere to suffer for 1,000 years." Then the teacher said something I did not expect. He said, "And at the end of those 1,000 years, what do you think he would have learned?" Further, how will this millennia of suffering aid the recovery of the souls that he harmed? Those questions threw me for a loop. I just stood there staring. I couldn't come up with an answer. So then he went on. He said, okay, those who are part of this school are granted special powers. He said, if you decide to condemn him, he will be sent to a plane of suffering for 1,000 years. And then, with this announcement still ringing in the astral air, I felt the entire class once again looking at me. And then worse, I locked eyes with the man, my fellow student, who he had grievously harmed, whose family he had grievously harmed, whose countrymen he had grievously hurt. And this man had forgiven him. And here I was, standing in judgment, when this man, who had been harmed directly by this figure in a tattered black World War II uniform, but he had forgiven him. So the rightness of my indignation just drained from me. And all I could think of to say is, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what I said. And as I said that, I faded away and returned to my physical body. As you might expect, this was a very profound experience for me. I entitled this Astral Guide School 1 because I hope that I'm still eligible, even though, let's face it, they must have really been lowering their standards to let me in. I am by no means someone who, there's tons of folks more deserving than me. So maybe it's just because I can astral project, and that's why I got the slot. But we'll see. I don't know. Maybe I'll get kicked out. If I do have further experiences, which I hope I will share them with you. If you liked this video, please hit the like button, share it with those of like minds. If you'd like to leave a comment or a question, please do so, because as you know, those comments and questions become part of future Q&As. And once again, I thank everyone, the folks who join Astral Club and my patrons on Patreon. And as always, I'm Rick, and I will see you on the astral plane.